You're listening to Miking It Up As We Go.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Rogers, certified fitness instructor, presenter, trainer, and wellness enthusiast.
And I'm Greg Ritter, licensed real estate agent and professional chef.
We are a recently married couple with a blended family. We invite you to spend a few minutes with us each week as we share our unique perspective on health, home life, and personal growth. Welcome back to the show. Before we get to our first segment, we wanted to share some listener feedback with you. Our segment on home voice assistants generated a lot of great feedback and discussion. Julie from Bulverde let us know how an in-home video system helps her keep in touch with her elderly parents when she's away from the house and assists with healthcare providers and being able to keep in contact with them.
That's really a great function that I had not ever considered.
I know, it's been super helpful for her. Joni from Austin left this message.
Hi, I'm Joni Rogers and wanted to call in about your awesome podcast. I love listening to it. I've listened to each show at least twice, and just like hearing your voices and all the things that you guys are talking about. My friend Gene has quadriplegia, and Alexa coming into his house has revolutionized his life. If there was anybody Alexa was made for, it's people who have disabilities and can't independently do things in their home. Simple things like turn the TV off and on, up and down, the volume up and down, or answer the phone, or ask questions, look up some information that during a conversation like we do. I am so happy that Gene has his new girlfriend, he calls her, to help him out around the house. It's made things a lot more normalized for him and maintain his independent spirit, which is so important.
That comment from Joni was really inspiring. I had not considered that as a benefit of the home voice assistants.
It really takes it to the next level, doesn't it?
It does. It shows you where people can find value in all kinds of things and for all kinds of situations.
Yeah, it's not just a luxury item. It's a quality of life issue at that point.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you, Joni. I love it when our listeners reach out to us and leave us voicemails.
So please leave your feedback. Let us know what your thoughts are on any and all of the topics we cover. In our health segment, we're going to discuss something that many of us take for granted, but is incredibly helpful and healthy if we have the ability to do that, and that is walking.
Walking is important. I do it every day.
Yes, and like I said, if you're healthy and are able to walk, it is the simplest and most beneficial exercise that we can get.
Right, exactly. And you know what? Oddly enough, the United States does not always take advantage of that. In fact, the United States is the least, or walks the least, of any industrialized country, with Australia and Switzerland taking about 9,700 steps a day on average, Japan 7,100, and then America, on average, an American will take about 5,100 steps a day. So we are way behind the curve on how much we walk.
Well, I would imagine we're a very car-dependent country, especially in Texas.
Yes, and I do enjoy driving. I like driving.
Yeah, when we have heat and a lot of distance between locations, we're in the car a lot.
It's true. Even what seems like a relatively short drive to work, about 12 miles for me, if I had to walk that every day, I don't think I could do it.
There wouldn't be enough time.
There wouldn't be enough
So
time.
Let's talk about practical walking.
Yes. Practical.
That wouldn't be practical. But as I understand it, walking has as much physical benefit as running does without the stress on your joints, your back, your feet.
This is true. I mean, and for me, a person of fairly good size, it has a lot of running has a lot of negative impact on my knees. So walking is something I can do. In fact, we've talked about it on the show before. When I was really heavy and I was first getting into exercise, the thing that I could commit to was walking for a short period of time. I would put on my shoes, walk away from the house for 15 minutes, turn around and walk back to the house in 15 minutes, take off my shoes, and return to my relatively lazy lifestyle.
Well, it sounds like that was a good turning point for you. And I don't think you're lazy, but I still think some days it is still a challenge to make it a point to put on your shoes, my shoes, and getting out the door.
It's
Luckily for me, I have mentioned before, I have a dog that requires a lot of exercise. So getting her out of the house is a great reason for us to be out of the house too.
I like the idea of having a purpose for your walking, not just walking. And that's how I started, just getting any kind of exercise was good for me. But now that I'm more active, I think it's fun to do things like incorporate the dog on a walk or going someplace to walk, say a park or a trail, something like that.
Yeah, I sometimes wish we lived in a community that had more walkable stores and shops and activities. We're much more in suburbia, but I do enjoy walking around our neighborhood, and it also gives us reason to find trails and do what's also known as hiking.
Yes, that's right. With different shoes.
Different shoes, different terrain. I know our youngest complained she did not like hiking,
But
when we reframed it and told her we were simply walking outdoors, she was on board with it.
yeah, whatever it takes.
So pick your battles. Some of the benefits of walking
Okay.
and there are a lot. It does, as you said, help with weight loss. It is sustainable. So as long as you're healthy, it's actually going to improve your health. So moderate time, 20-30 minutes a day, will considerably increase bone density, lower blood pressure, improve your heart health, strengthen muscle. Heart is a muscle.
Right.
Slows mental decline, and also aids in better sleep. So there are so many things. We could keep on and on and on. Why don't we just walk all the time?
I also like the fact that it doesn't take a lot of gear, right? Shoes. And probably the shoes that you have will work. You don't need a membership or tools. You just need to get out the door.
That's true. A lot of people that I know, and at periods, I've had concerns about like pain in my feet, to which I discovered orthotics or arch supports, which greatly improved my ability to walk for longer periods of time and just made being on my feet more comfortable.
Right.
So if you do have pain, I suggest seeing a podiatrist or your doctor and seeing if it's a simple remedy.
I had that myself, some foot pain. I went to a podiatrist and ended up just being able to use inserts from HEB, from our local grocery store. And that made a huge difference in my comfort without a lot of expense.
And I happen to think shoes are an important investment. I've tried to walk in, say, a Converse type shoe, which are super great to look at, but they're not very supportive. So I encourage a good walking shoe or running shoe that you don't have to spend a whole lot of money, but that has better support and laces up nice and tight. Otherwise, you risk twisting your ankle or your shoe slipping. And you don't want to take on additional risk just by doing something as simple as walking.
Agreed. Having a good pair of shoes is going to help you be able to walk more.
Correct.
More often.
Yep. And I do also want to caution, know your surroundings. Be aware of possible hazards on the road. I think you've got a little story of a slip recently.
Oh yeah, walking in mud and then getting onto the roadway, and that mud between the sole of my shoe and the roadway, I just slipped and hit the ground pretty hard. Was not comfortable. It didn't stop me from getting around, but not enjoyable for sure. And I have also like stepped on a dirt clod and twisted my ankle. So beware of your surroundings.
And be careful. So I read a study, not the whole study.
Mm-hmm.
I read a study.
Yeah. You're a study reader.
I'm a study reader.
You are.
From Harvard. I read Harvard studies.
Of course, because that's where all the best studies happen.
That says that walking tames the sweet tooth. That the walkers they studied had 14% less cravings for chocolate.
14.
As much as I walk, I would be really afraid to know how much I crave chocolate if I didn't walk.
Right. You'd be 14% more likely.
It's pretty off the charts as it is.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd have to walk all the time.
114%.
So I'm not sure if I believe that study, but well, it's Harvard, right?
It's Harvard, so they have to be right.
Right.
How do you get your steps in?
Oh, well, some days it's challenging because I can work on a computer for 8 hours straight, but I do make it a point to try to run errands that I could send other people on. Mm-hmm. I will make it a point to walk, and I can add an extra mile just by running simple errands.
Well, that's great.
On the campus where I work. And the dog, that's the main thing.
Dog gets a lot of steps in. She would get in 40,000 steps a day if she could.
She would. So how do you like to get your steps in? Do you count steps? And if so, what
kind of technology do you use to count your steps? I use a phone app, but lots of people use Fitbits and all manner of things to count their steps.
And regardless, if you are a walker, do so with gratitude and take a moment to be grateful that you can perform that simple exercise on a daily basis.
Amen. That's a great point. In our home segment, we're going to talk about the power of the leftover. Our leftovers are actually something that is a standard practice in our home. Isn't that right?
I definitely love leftovers.
Yes. Well, leftovers are important to us.
This is a ridiculously exciting segment for me.
It is
because
indeed.
It took some conversion to get you onto the leftover train.
It did. I was at the leftover station, unwilling to board the leftover train.
Throwing out all that perfectly good food or letting it go to waste in your fridge.
Well, and having a restaurant background, the idea of just preparing enough for a serving was something that I just did. But I'm here to tell you now, I am all on board the leftover train. But it wasn't always that way for America or for people in general. The leftover is a relatively recent phenomenon.
Well, I would guess before modern refrigeration.
You are correct.
You
are
could
correct,
not
Suzanne.
save food for a long period of time.
You couldn't unless you wanted to cover it in salt. But so in the early 1900s, refrigeration came around, but it wasn't really until the 1960s when the majority of the population of the United States even had electricity, and food refrigeration was a widespread thing. Unfortunately, the popularity did not last long. After a time, it became sort of a social stigma to have to save food. And actually, if you served somebody leftovers, it was considered to be a bad thing.
I can see how that would be maybe not, maybe impolite
Mhm.
or something like that. However, back to the love of leftovers.
Yeah, let's get back to the positive side.
The leftovers saves me so much time and money.
Mhm.
I can't imagine not having leftovers for my daily lunches.
Mhm.
So we have, I don't know if you guys know this, but I live with a chef who makes really great food. So to be able to eat the meals that we've enjoyed the night before, the next day for lunches, I know how many calories I'm getting. I know what the ingredients are. I'm not spending anything extra that I've already invested financially. And it's a time saver. I don't have to leave campus or my workplace to go find food.
That's right.
Lose my parking space. So there's so many benefits.
Yeah, I think over time we sort of have come up with a leftover system, or maybe we call it a casual leftover practice.
We do. We have a good system.
We make enough food, first of all, to serve everybody, and then have leftovers. When we're done, we package those leftovers as individual servings, right?
Right. So when you're thinking about your leftovers, if you aren't already in the habit of doing so, think of how much you need for that meal and then double it, triple it, depending on how many servings you would like to have remaining. And make sure you have some really good containers.
Mhm.
We'll set out our individual serving containers, and we usually have 2 to 3, knowing that we'll need that many lunches.
Yeah, everybody in the house needs lunch the next day, and this is a way to do that. And then there's other things to do with leftovers, like say you've got something like chili. Well, chili is chili, and you can have it with cornbread and a salad, and that's a good meal. But as a leftover, it could go on pasta in a pinch. It could go on, certainly, what do you like it on?
Sweet potatoes.
Sweet potatoes is a good one.
And then we combine it with rice
Mhm.
for the little one's lunch in
Mhm.
her
Yep.
thermos. Yeah. So morphing the leftover into a different meal
Mhm.
is
Yeah,
an awesome thing. So it's a base for something
Yeah.
else.
that's next level
Totally.
leftover
That might be advanced. So
ninja skills, right?
contact us if you'd like some to talk through that.
Mhm. Yeah, but not everybody loves leftovers.
Yeah, I know some people who are totally averse to it, thinking, I don't know. I don't know that mentality. Even before I lived with a chef, I enjoyed my own leftovers, or like, who doesn't love leftover pizza from going out the night before, or who doesn't, and I mean this seriously, who doesn't bring home their leftovers from restaurants?
Doggy bags, yeah.
To me, that would just be a gross waste of food and money.
Yep.
And that's probably where my investment in the leftover comes from, is just not wanting to create waste, and definitely not wanting to throw money away.
Right.
So let us know. Are you a fan of the leftover? Foe? Hater? If so, why?
I would really be curious to hear from someone who's anti-leftover.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to hear what that rationale is.
Or if you have a new take on leftovers, let us know what that is too.
Yes.
Give us a call.
Yes, call us if you have a comment to make about leftovers. We'd love to hear from you. Please give us a call at 512-522-7097 and let us know.
In our inspiration segment, let's talk about when something appears to be the worst scenario that in the long run ends up being a best scenario.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while, and I think originally we called it when the worst thing turns out to be the best thing. And it's sort of, it's hard to describe it in just a short phrase. I think you did a good job there. My note here is, when bad turns good. But it's something that has been good for me to learn as I've gotten further in my life, because for me, it's a best practice to remember that even when things seem really bad, maybe they're not so bad. I think I remember my mom saying stuff when I was a little kid, like, hey, someday we'll all laugh about this. And I found that to be true. How about you?
That has been a really difficult concept and lesson for me to learn. I'm
Mhm.
getting better at it,
Mhm.
but I'm very much this is what's happening in the moment. This is reality.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to change.
Right.
And that's not true. So learning to remind myself of that in the moment is important, to realize this is a temporary situation,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be really, really awful. There
Mhm.
are some awful things that happen in life, and having lived through them and seeing that the outcome eventually changes
Mm-hmm.
is one way of addressing this topic.
Right.
That we don't know the outcome of things. There is no outcome. It's always evolving. Things are always evolving.
Right. I think like a very straightforward one for me is looking back at relationships, and when they end, it always feels bad. Did I take your topic?
You took my topic. Topic thief.
Jump in here.
No,
then,
you
honey.
brought it. It's okay. Well, perhaps, I guess, because that is the most prevalent thing. We all have relationships, whether they're romantic or friendships or family, parents.
Business relationship too.
Relationships change over time. And sometimes it appears that they are gone forever, which sometimes is a really good thing.
You're not really sure how things look until you understand the context with which you will view them in the future.
And the future is always evolving, so you never really can fully see, because there is no actual end to things. So is that what you had in mind?
Yeah, that's what I had in mind. I like the concept. I like to keep this concept in mind, not to avoid pain, but to know that there is likely to be happiness in the future.
Okay. Well, those are the takeaways then. That situations are temporary. They will change. Good will come from them, and other things that are perceived as bad will also happen, but that will change too.
Yeah. And if there's an expectation that good will come, it's more likely to come. I believe that.
And getting to that place, that realization sooner than later.
That's helpful. Yes. Jinx. You
owe me a carbonated water.
Sparkling beverage. Yeah. All right.
So my hang-ups about getting stuck in this situation is permanent, whether it's good or bad. I think it's going to remain the same, but things change. Being open to that change and open to all the possibilities at all times is what leads to what we perceive to be miracles. Things that seem to come out of nowhere are really set off by a whole chain of events that we can't see all the connections. So one thing is happening that looks really horrible from this perspective, but from someone else's perspective, or even just changing my mindset, means that something else is formulating that I'm just not aware of, and eventually leads to something else. So as long as that flow is open and my perception stays open to all possibilities, it's going to lead to the next wonderful thing.
Agreed. I like the idea of just not getting stuck. When we get stuck, we don't make progress. So I really like that.
Right. So worst, best are labels that we put on things. It's really about the flow and being open to all things in our lives.
Yeah, it's true. And the point that you brought up that I hadn't considered, not getting stuck in or trying to attach yourself to this really positive outcome as well. when something really great is happening, knowing that that too will change. And it's all always going to be okay. Stuff that's good.
So, do you have any specific stories or examples of when this happened in your life where you can see a chain of events that unfolded that you perceived as being really bad and ended up totally different, or the opposite? You thought it was really great and led you down a whole different path than you imagined.
Yeah. So give us a shout, make a comment, or give us a phone call.
Thank you for listening. I'm Suzanne.
And I'm Greg.
We are miking it up as we go.
Thanks for listening. Again.
Still. Would you like to eat this? I'm only going to give it to an animal.
I wrote a note and I can't read what I wrote.
Not just You're listening to Miking It Up as We Go.